So you did everything right. You went to your John Riley book, or you went to a book full of transcriptions, or maybe you even pulled it from the record yourself to get your own vocab to play for your jazz solos. But then when you go to the jam session, you get on stage, you just go back to the same licks you've been playing the whole time, right? It feels like everything's trapped behind bars and it doesn't come out in your solos. When that happens, it's kind of like, why did I even work on this vocab, right? Like the point of it is for it to come out in a performance. It's all well and good to sit here and practice it and try to get it right, but we want it to actually come out in our solos. And if you want to do that, you have to start practicing in a different way, right? The reason this happens is because you're not thinking of your vocabulary like learning a language, right? When you're learning a new word in a language, this happened when I was in school. I had to use it in a sentence. That way you actually know it. If you just memorize the word and the definition, but you never know how to use it, of course it's not going to come out when you're playing, right? That's how you have to practice your vocab. So I'm going to teach you 3 steps to make it so that your vocabulary actually comes out in your playing when you're on the bandstand. And then it's like, we're actually practicing this for a good reason. See what I mean? Okay, so the first step to playing any vocab is you have to ask yourself, can I play it right? Like, can I actually play the vocab? Okay, and let me show you what I mean here. So I'm going to use this Max Roach phrase. I got it for 4 Big Sid, which is one of his famous drum solos, and I call it 3 up, 1 down. It goes like this. Right? Super simple. Now, the important thing here is we want to get not just the phrase, but the subtleties of the phrase, okay? So when I say that, I could play this phrase like this. And if I learned it from a book, I probably would, right? Because I'm just thinking of it mechanically. But the subtlety in this is that there's like a layered dynamic to it, right? It's not like just all even notes, right? It's staggered. So I'm going to let the stick bounce gradually. Right? You can hear that gives it a lot more sound. It sounds like jazz rather than this. Right? Right? That's what gives its sound. And if it sounds good, it's going to be more likely to come out in your playing. The other thing is the touch, right? If I'm playing with a super hard touch, it sounds really tight, it sounds uncomfortable. Right? If I play with a lighter touch, it sounds more legato, it sounds more fluid, and it's going to be more usable in a jazz context. Okay? You also want to make sure that you have your movement dialed in, right? The thing to even get those touch and that subtlety is I have to be moving in the right way, right? So for that phrase, right, the way that I'm achieving that staggered dynamics is that I'm just letting the stick bounce as if I was, right, just bouncing it naturally. Like a bouncy ball, right? A lot of people struggle with this because they start turning their wrists and they get in the way of the bounce. Right? If I can't even do that, how am I going to play it in a solo, right? It has to be internalized in my body with the right motions before I even bring it out at a jam session, right? Okay? These steps, can I play it right? Getting the subtleties, touch, movement. You have to start with that before you can go on to the next step, which is like being creative with it, right? If you can't play it right and you get all the subtleties wrong, it's like, why would we even want it to come out in our playing? If it sounds stiff, if it's awkward to play, it's never going to be used creatively, okay? But once you got this down, can I play it right? Then, of course, you can move on to using it more creatively. So the question I want to ask at this step is, how many ways can I do this, okay? And this is a really fun part. I call this like the molding like clay phase. And the reason I call it that is, my sister, we used to make little sculptures together with clay. And I would be like, oh, I'm going to make a snake, I'm going to make a hat, I'm going to make a, a nose, whatever. And she would be still moving it around and just shaping it in her hands. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm seeing what it wants to be, right? She would make a circle, she would make it flat, she would stretch it out, she would clump it all together, not committing to anything, and then eventually she would make something out of it, right? You have to do the same with your vocabulary. If you only know how to play it one way, that's like knowing a word but you can only use it in one sentence, right? You're not communicating with that. It's just memorization. So if you can use these in multiple different ways, then you can actually play it in your solos, okay? So ask yourselves these questions. What if I played it with a different subdivision? For example, here's this phrase. Right, that's kind of eighth notes. What if I use it in triplets? 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? If I go eighth notes then triplets, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, that's interesting. 16th notes. Right? That gives me something to work on. Now I can play a whole solo with just that, right? But I'm going to go on to orchestration. What if I played this on different drums? Instead of staying on the one drum, right? I can start to make different shapes out of that. What if I go clockwise around the drums? Counterclockwise. Right? One I like to do is out, in, out, in. Right? Already there's so many possibilities here. Next, what if I started it on a different beat, right? So imagine I'm playing a solo. Start it on beat 1, start it on beat 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? That's really interesting. It sets up an expectation and then it defies it, right? That's musicality. Set up an expectation, break expectations, or fulfill them. That's how you be creative, okay? Next thing, what if I mix it with other vocab, right? This is really important because, again, going back to learning a new word, if you don't know how to use that word with all the words that you use usually, then you won't have the brain connections of like, oh, after I say this, then this will come out, right? So it's really important when you learn a new piece of vocab to mix it in with things that you usually play, right? So for example, I'm going to play that phrase, I'm going to force it, I'm going to start with that phrase, and then I'm going to play something else, okay? Right? Now I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to play something I usually play and then try to end with that phrase. Right? I'm mixing it into my everyday speech. Now, this is coming out really smooth because I've played this phrase before, but if you're doing it with a phrase you've never done, at first it's going to be kind of choppy. It's going to feel like something like this. Right? It's going to be, I just barely got it, right? But that's the work you're doing at this phase. That's why, one, it's so important to be able to play it right and have the muscle memory dialed in first. And two, to actually do this phase so you can work out the kinks so that later, when you're putting it in context, that's the next step, it comes out smooth. You don't have those kinks, right? That's why you're avoiding playing it on stage, because you're actually afraid that it's going to come out choppy. And you don't want to play something choppy in front of these other players, right? You want to play something that's smooth so you stay in your safe zone. So if you can bring your safe zone higher and better, then it's actually going to come out when you're playing, okay? Next, other things we can do to be creative with this. We can stretch it out, right? So this is kind of going back to the rhythm. If I go eighth notes, stretch it out to quarter notes. Right? Pretty simple. We can condense it. We already kind of did that with the triplets. Mix it together, okay? We can use math. This one's really interesting, okay? So if I think of this phrase, it's a grouping of 4, right? What if I made it a grouping of 6? Right? I added a couple notes. It's still kind of within the same vein, but it's starting to be a new phrase, right? That's interesting, right? You can take this as far as you want to. Group of 5. Right? Ooh, that's really interesting. Now, that doesn't sound, well, it kind of tastes like Max Roach, but it doesn't sound exactly like Max Roach anymore. It's starting to sound like something new. It's starting to sound like something different. It's starting to sound like me, right? This is where you develop your own voice. Is like, I heard Kendrick Scott talk about it. It's your filter, right? Those experiments that I'm doing, they're unique to me. And when I take this thing and put them together in a unique way, that's how you develop your own voice. It's not coming up with ideas out of thin air. It's taking something old and something new and putting them together, right? Next way that you can do this is you could do it backwards, right? Right? Oh, that's interesting. That goes a totally different way. But if I can play it all those different ways, now it's going to be flexible. I don't just have like this one thing that I'm trying to force into a solo. It's like when you're having a conversation and you have this joke you want to tell and you just force it, and it's super awkward and it doesn't sound good. It has to flow out naturally. That's why it has to be flexible. Okay? And by the way, vocabulary is not the only thing you need to work on to really feel comfortable flowing in a jam session. You need to know the tunes. You need to know the vocabulary. You need to be able to phrase well. You have to have a good touch and technique and flow, and you have to sound like a jazz musician. So if that's something you're trying to work on, this is what I help my students with, okay? There's a couple links in the description. You can click one where you can apply to work with me more closely, and we'll make you a complete jazz musician, or you can check out the free course that I have down there. Both of those links are in the description. Now, step 3 is maybe the most important one, and it's probably the one that gets skipped the most often when people are practicing. It's putting it in context, okay? It's asking the question, how can I make it make sense, right? This is just an idea. It's just a word, right? But music isn't just vocabulary. Music is meaning. It's expressing yourself. It's playing a solo that has a feel and a vibe and is communicating something. And to do that, you have to use phrasing, okay? So, we're going to take these ideas and we're going to put it in different contexts, okay? To see if it'll flow out when we're not just thinking about the vocabulary. So there's tons of ways that I like to practice this. The first is you can say, I'm going to use a certain length bar number of phrase, right? So for example, how can I play a 1-bar phrase with this idea? Right? There's a 1-bar phrase. How can I play a 2-bar phrase with this idea? Right? You can feel the length of that phrase. Right? It's a context. How can I play a 4-bar phrase with this? Right? That's a longer phrase. If I can think about that phrase length and play the idea, then I know it's really internalized because it doesn't take all of my energy just to remember the idea. Okay? Another thing you could do is do what we call a phrasing map. Okay? This is a little bit more complex idea. I have other videos where I talk about this. But the idea is like a structure, kind of like an obstacle course of phrasing that you use to make your solos make sense and develop your phrasing. Okay? A good example is the phrasing, the melody map for Now's the Time. Now's the Time goes like this. Right? You can hear that that's a short phrase, the same short phrase, and then a longer phrase, right? So I'm going to use that phrasing map. I'm going to go 1-bar phrase, 1-bar phrase, 2-bar phrase. And I'm going to try to use the repetition in there too, with my piece of vocab. A lot of things going on here at once, but this is how you really internalize it. You got to put some weight on the bar. And you see how my math idea, my 6-beat phrase is coming out with this, right? I'm going to do a couple more of these. Maybe I'll mix in some other vocab and use that phrasing map. That's interesting, okay? One more. Right, there's my backwards idea. You see this is starting to come out, it's starting to sound like music. Another way that you can apply this is you can put it in a style, right? So right now I've kind of been doing like medium swing. Let's think of another style. Let's think of like, maybe I was playing a rock beat or something, or a pop song, right? So. Right? It's very simple, But just moving it into different contexts. You see, I played it with double stops. I played it more straight, right? I took this phrase and now I can use it as a rock fill, right? If I can make it elastic like this, it's gonna come out in more ways than just one, right? Another way is like, what does it sound like at a fast tempo? Right? Okay. If you can use an idea in more than just one context, then of course it's gonna come out more often, right? If you could only play it at 127.5 beats per minute, it's gonna be a rare opportunity that that idea comes out. That's how you get this stuff to come out in your playing, okay? Other thing you can do is play it at different tempos. I kind of just did that with the fast tempos. Another one, this is interesting, not a lot of people think about this, is to play it in a solo versus play it with comping, right? I've been playing it in a solo context, it's a solo idea, but you can use your solo ideas for comping. That's how you get more mileage out of them. You see there, it's like, that is such a great comping idea. It's so simple. It has a great like musical DNA to it because I took it from a real source, Max Roach, right? But like now that idea is gonna come out in my comping and my soloing, right? That's how you get an idea to come out. With ideas, with vocabulary, I'd rather have one idea that I can use 1,000 different ways than have 1,000 ideas that I can use one way. I want to get the mileage out of each idea so that I feel more free, I feel more relaxed because I know this one idea like it's the back of my hand, right? It's like the pair of shoes that I wear every single day. I know how it fits, you know? I know how it feels when I walk in the woods or when I walk on the street. So if you go through all these steps and you ask yourself these 3 questions: 1, can I play it right? 2, how many ways can I do this? 3, can I make it make sense? It will come out in your solos when you go on stage, when you're playing at a jam session or at a concert. So if you found this fun, hope you'll check out some more of the videos. You should see a recommended one right here. I hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.